You're listening to the Catholic Wives with Toxic In-Laws podcast. Today's episode is titled, Where is Your Husband's Heart? Are you a Catholic wife grappling with challenging in-laws? The Catholic Wives with Toxic In-Laws podcast is your sanctuary for navigating the sometimes stormy seas of life with toxic in-laws while being validated for what you've experienced. Join me, your host, Miriam Susan, a Catholic wife who's weathered 3 decades of in-law drama, as we tackle the tough issues you're dealing with head on. Welcome to today's episode. I am Miriam Susan, your host, and this week begins the series that I'm going to be going through this February 2026, all about emotional availability, emotional energy within our marriages, and how our toxic in-laws really impact our marriages. A lot of people refer to February as the month of love because, of course, we have the feast day for St. Valentine on the 14th. And so I wanted to kind of run with that and explore just how harmful and how impactful these toxic relationships are with our in-laws on our marriages. So today's scripture reference is from the Gospel according to St. Matthew. It's chapter 6, verse 21. And this is from the New Revised Standard Version Catholic edition, which says, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." So really the core of today's episode is going to be about emotional energy and attention and how they are finite resources. It means like there's just not a never-ending supply of them, right? And so when your husband is consistently directing his emotional energy, directing his attention, directing his heart space towards his parents first, there's just, as a matter of fact, less available for you and your marriage and your children. And this is not about us being jealous of our in-laws because they can twist it that way, but it's about recognizing a pattern that leaves you feeling more like your husband's roommate than his wife and his life partner and the person he's supposed to lean on first in life, right? So there is this roommate feeling that can often come when we have issues with our husband's heart being more tied to his parents than to us as his wife. Now, we can coordinate logistics and parent together, but still have a feeling of this disconnect emotionally. And you love each other. You're committed to each other, but something feels off. Now, according to the Gospel, according to St. Matthew that I read earlier, 6:21, where someone invests their emotional energy shows where their treasure is, where their heart is. And this isn't about the amount of physical time spent together or the number of phone calls you make between each other. It's about the emotional investment and priority. So, for example, your husband shares exciting news with his mom and dad first before he tells you. Or he processes disappointment. Maybe he did not make the promotion that he thought he was going to get. And he processes that with his parents first. Or maybe he seeks his dad's approval over something that he's doing, maybe something he's striving for, maybe another degree or a certification or whatever, before he does with you. So he's seeking like this validation. He's seeking just the praise. And really, it's probably he's seeking the love that maybe he didn't get. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. An attention that he didn't get from his parents as a child. And so what does this look like? What do these patterns look like? Well, who does he tend to turn to? Who does your husband turn to when he's stressed, when he's excited, or when he needs to make a decision? Is it you? Or is it mom and dad? Now, here's another example. Who gets your husband's best emotional energy? Is it you or is it his parents? And then who gets what's left over? There were many times in our marriage, especially when we lived very close to my in-laws, where we just got the leftovers. And his mom was calling him and spending hours and hours and hours on the phone with him every single day. And we lived within an hour of them. And so it wasn't like she missed him. It was she needed something emotionally from my husband. And bless his heart, he did not know how to stand up to her and say no, because the ramifications were if he tried to get off the phone, she would fly off the handle and literally go nuts. And so I understand why he struggled with saying, Mom, I have to get off the phone. My wife and my 5 young children need me. But that's the way the whole system was set up. It was set up so that if his mom had an emotional need, she was going to get it from you no matter what. It didn't matter. It didn't matter that we had 5 young children, with one being a very small infant. It didn't matter. If she wanted to talk and talk and talk for 2-3 hours, it didn't matter. Does your husband protect his parents' feelings more carefully and more gingerly than yours? Is he more concerned about making sure mom and dad stay happy than you do? That's a big thing to notice. That is important to notice. And whenever there's conflict between you and your in-laws, whose emotional comfort does your husband prioritize? A lot of times it will be that your in-laws' emotional comfort gets prioritized over ours, over yours, because we don't blow up like mom and dad do. We don't have these emotional explosions, outbursts that our in-laws do. And so it's easier for our husbands, I think, to deal with us being, pouty or irritated or annoyed or whatever, versus dealing with the blowout from mom and dad. And chances are it's not just mom and dad, but it'll be any siblings that, jump on the bandwagon and, they'll say, how can you treat mom like this? How can you treat dad like this? After all they've done for you, it's a lot easier to deal with us who don't have those kinds of reactions than it is for them to deal with this emotional chaos that comes from, disappointing or just placating, or not placating, the opposite of placating. They'd rather placate us than their parents because we're just not as difficult. It's more trauma, more chaos if they don't placate their parents. So why does this matter for our marriages? Well, the Catholic teachings about marriage is that it is a covenant that requires total self-gift. It means that we have to totally give ourselves to our spouses, not to our parents. And you can't have a good sense of intimacy when all you've got is emotional scraps from your spouse. It doesn't work that way. So this pattern keeps both of you stuck. So he stays in the role as a good son instead of being a mature husband. And like I said, you just get the scraps. You can be doing everything you can to keep your marriage strong and healthy, but if his focus is outside of the proper order of a Catholic family, again, I go back to this time and time again because it is so important. Your marriage is not going to be the way God intended, because God intends for us to have him as the center, our spouse as that next ring, and then our children as the next ring, and then everybody else comes outside of that. And when these parents are pulling our husbands away from that second circle, well, obviously, if they're pulling us and pulling our husbands out of alignment in the way that a family should be properly ordered, it's going to pull them away from God. That's just how it is. If your husband's parents have a position of importance that puts them before you and your children, it is going to pull them away from God, because God desires for our families to be structured in the way that He structured them. We're not supposed to be more emotionally intimate with our parents than we are with our spouses. That's just not how it was designed. And so if you have in-laws that are distorting that and they're drawing His attention away from you, they're also probably drawing His attention away from God and distorting that relationship as well. So there is this exhaustion that comes from being in this kind of relationship. And it's not because you're needy. It's not because you're needy. It's because you're trying to build intimacy in a relationship with someone who's already given their primary emotional energy to someone else. And no, it's not like, I can see where some people might say, well, it's kind of like an affair. And I guess kind of it is, but that's kind of a really yucky word that I don't like to apply to this situation, because it's just gross. But if anybody else outside of your marriage, you and your husband, is getting emotional energy that should be devoted to God and you, your spouse and your children, it destroys your family, kind of like an affair would, in a different way. But it does. It erodes the trust. It erodes that connection, because it's not ordered in the way that God intended. So if you are recognizing these kind of patterns where your husband has something exciting happen and immediately he wants to call mom and dad, and you just maybe happen to hear about it first because you were there when he found out, or he finds out something first and he calls them, and then you find out after they already know, you're not being crazy and you're not being selfish. Now, naming this is not about making your husband the villain. I want to make sure that you walk away from this episode knowing that. This is not about your husband being the villain. It's about seeing clearly what is actually happening. And this awareness is just the first part of protecting what is sacred in your marriage. Now, like I said at the beginning, this is a series that I am going through, and next week we are going to be talking about and exploring what it looks like when a parent is filling a role that belongs to you, spouse. So you need to remember these takeaways for you. Number one is emotional energy is finite. We and our husbands don't have this infinite amount of emotional energy. It runs out, especially if you have toxic in-laws that seem to drain it at a faster rate than normal. Also, this is not a competition between you and your mother-in-law or you and your father-in-law. But someone else is getting this emotional intimacy that belongs just within your marriage. And then finally, this is not about being jealous. Again, this is not a competition. This is about protecting what is sacred. This is protecting the covenant that you entered into when you got married. Whether you got married in the Catholic Church or not, if you have a sacramental marriage, this is about protecting that sacrament. So, if you feel like this resonates, if what I'm saying is really hitting home, I want to extend an invitation to join my Catholic Wives Plus Toxic In-Laws community at toxicinlaws.com. This is a safe space for you to be with other women who understand what you're going through. They know what it's like to have in-laws that don't respect you, that just disregard your boundaries, that want to have a greater influence in your lives than is proper. And so I would love for you to join us in this free community at toxicinlaws.com. There is a paid option to upgrade if you want to get deeper insights into certain topics. We have a monthly theme. This month we're talking about this theme, talking about, how to protect our marriages. But I've also talked about boundaries. I've talked about legal protection, but that's a safe space for you to be online to connect with other women who really understand how heavy this cross is to bear. So I'd love to have you join us, toxicinlaws.com, and I hope to see you inside. Again, our marriages are the future of the church. Yes, we need priests. Yes, we need religious, but without us, without Catholic marriages that are strong and healthy, there's no future for the church. We are the ones who really carry a huge burden to keep the church going into the future. And so I encourage you to do what you can. Pray for your husbands. Always pray for your husbands, and even pray for your in-laws to just bless them, for your marriage to be strong, for your children to see and witness what a good and holy Catholic marriage looks like, so that they have a great example to take in to their lives in the future if they are called to marriage. But we have to remember that this is a hard thing to do all alone. And it can make you feel extremely isolated. I know that's why I created this community, so that I can connect with other women who understand. And so I pray that you would join us for the rest of the episodes this month as we dive deep into this topic of emotional energy, emotional intimacy within our marriages, and understand better what we're dealing with, so that we can equip ourselves to live out our vocations in the best way possible. God bless you. Go in peace. Disclaimer. All content and information on this podcast and our website, including our programs, products, and/or services, is for information and educational purposes only and does not constitute professional medical, psychiatric, or mental health advice of any kind, and does not establish any kind of professional client relationship by your listening to this podcast or use of my website. A professional client relationship with you is only formed after we have expressly entered into a written agreement with you that you have signed, including our fee structure and other terms to work with you in a specific matter. Although we strive to provide accurate general information, the information presented here is not a substitute for any kind of professional advice, and you should not rely solely on this information. Always consult a professional in the area for your particular needs and circumstances prior to making any professional, medical, or mental health related decisions.